Hello, everybody, and welcome to this new live stream and this codeLive episode. My name is Philippe Ozil, and today I'm joined with Stefan Price from Tableau. Stefan, do you want to introduce yourself, maybe?
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much, Philippe. And thank you as well to every member of the audience. It's so exciting for me to be here. I was looking at my phone and I got a notification saying that the stream was about to start, and it's the first time in my life. It definitely feels amazing. Philippe, do you think I should give viewers a little bit of my background so that they
Sure,
understand who I am?
please do.
Okay. Well, my name is Stefan Price, and very happy to be here and talk to you about Tableau and our Postman collection. I am a solutions engineer at Tableau at Salesforce, and I am somebody who talks to our customers every single day, and I talk to them about how they're using our APIs to be able to meet their needs and solve their own problems. So I'm very familiar with how useful they can be, and also how familiar with how just getting started and understanding the subject of how these APIs can change the way that you work with Tableau can mean the difference between somebody who um, hasn't reached that level yet. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to be here, Philippe.
Awesome. We have a great lineup, great topic today. So, just give you a bit of an overview about what we're going to talk about. We're going to start with a short introduction about data dev, what this means, what's a data tribe. Then we'll talk a bit about how we can get started with one of my favorite tools, that's Postman and the great Tableau APIs. We'll continue with some examples and maybe we'll share a bit more about the roadmap. What's exciting innovation coming up for us? All right. So how you take it away now? Let's talk about data maybe.
Okay, that's awesome. That's great. And I think it's the right place to start because it's honestly a hashtag. I wouldn't say don't call it think it's an official term, but I think it's a great way to group the Tableau developer platform in a way that our community resonates with, and call it data dev, and basically what it will reveal to you is the wide surface area that we have, all these different APIs that you can choose to work with, but then also bring together the world of an analyst who's using Tableau Desktop and perhaps an architect or a team of developers at your company that want to bring both of these worlds together to solve problems that are unique to what your company
Right.
is trying to achieve.
And I
So
assume
that's
by sorry, I assume by data dev you mean code and no code solution, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that is a big part of the picture here because I was in that place for a while. I remember when I was first falling in love with writing JavaScript and Python, and I knew you could pretty much solve anything. But then after you build a few projects, you know how much it takes to maintain and keep those projects relevant. When you build on something like Tableau, imagine having the flexibility to take risks, the flexibility to be able to come up with an idea and take it to market or to the user base so much faster, and then having that immediate feedback loop for you to understand if it's the right fit, if something must change. Now, if the journey getting there is super long and takes a lot of time, you're going to take far fewer risks.
Of
And
course.
yeah, I think that would be a good way to describe it in just a few sentences. And it will be more obvious for people who are new to Tableau as soon as we get into the details.
Awesome. I'm really excited. So how did you come up and discover Postman, by the way?
And great question. Now, I learned about Postman a long time ago. However, I actually worked in the API space for a little bit over a year, specifically in API design and open API. So I always
Ah,
loved Postman ever since. And when I came back to this team at Tableau doing embedded analytics, I realized that having a good collection was a huge gap. It was going to upskill pretty much everybody at the company that needs to help customers use these APIs and then make it so much easier for all of our customers as well. So I thought it was a great contribution to the community, and so far that's been the case. We've had great feedback.
excellent, excellent. So I heard that you have today for us a little demo that we're gonna get a bit hands-on, right?
Yeah, that's definitely what I want to do. I mean, the collection is something that It has some idiosyncrasies. It'd be interesting to see if other people who work often with Postman can give us some feedback. But overall, a project that we're very proud of as well. And Philippe, if you'd like, I could start sharing my screen. And
Sure, let's do that.
yeah, okay, because this is
Here we
pretty
go.
conversational, and it's my first live stream. Everybody,
Yep.
so yeah, I wouldn't say I'm
All right, you'll need to share your screen and I can add you to this.
the entire screen. Yeah, I think that will work best because I might have to move around
All right, here we
a little
go.
bit.
You're on.
Are you saying Tableau for architects?
Yep.
Okay. Now, I'm just trying to keep this simple so we can focus on the collection itself. Those are very important details. However, at a high level, if you were to ask me, Stefan, can you present Tableau in a way that makes it relevant to somebody who writes software or thinks about integrating software rather than perhaps your traditional user base, which is the analyst? This is what I would do. And I would basically just make sure that we're on the same page before we get started. How much experience do you have working with an architecture that resembles what you see on the left hand side? Just having a data source, but then needing an ORM to translate queries that you would make with your language, objects in Python, for example, to something that data source understands and sanitizes and does a lot of neat functionality for you as well, but something to interface between what you want to do and the SQL necessary to get there. And then finally, having to set up and maintain a backend that is secure and scalable. But how you're going to get that data to a front end client very often will rely on HTTP APIs. So just assume that's part of the big picture here. And I'm an API guy. I love APIs. That's why I know what it takes. And then on the front end side, you're also talking about, well, I'm going to have a application that needs to look interesting. So we're looking at a decent front end as well. And finally, once you have those pieces in place, now you're looking at displaying the data in a way that is compelling, that is actionable, that's interesting, that resonates. So that finally, then you start talking about what the visualization should look like, but there's a whole chain of dependencies here. If you need to change that presentation somewhat, think of all the chain of events that need to happen and how long it's going to take you to get there. So maybe you might think you can describe this architecture with a different word. I just call it expensive. And I wouldn't say remove it. It's a great way to build software. It's just you need to kind of understand what it implies, and it's not the only tool in your toolbox. However, if you have a Tableau environment at your company, even if today is just being used to service dashboards for internal users, know that Tableau can be easily described as like a Swiss Army knife of data. We're pretty much built to connect to anything, help you visualize it without writing code, and share those insights with everybody. So it's a very actionable platform. It's a Swiss Army knife of data, and it has all these APIs on top of them. Imagine the power. So I agree. There's a little bit more detail when you look at this Tableau box. There's a little bit there's more detailed within that box that we actually take care of you. We actually take care of all those details for you. So it will be as easy as using Tableau to connect to your data, publishing the resulting content that you build. It doesn't necessarily have to be super analytical either. It can be an infographic. So just think of it as content, and then you're embedding that content into your application and presenting it to the end user. That process will give you a feedback loop that's a lot more efficient and brings to the subject other topics that you need to keep in mind. When I said that I went through a moment in time where I was really focused and just solving everything with Python and JavaScript manually, is because I didn't have enough experience to know that many times what companies are looking for is that business continuity. So being able to take this project that was useful and maybe the business gets sold to a new company or the team gets moved around and somebody else has ownership of the solution, do you want them to have to learn how to maintain something in the latest JavaScript framework that you thought was interesting back when you started the project? Or would you rather have a common, secure, predictable platform to build on top of? And that's it. Really, don't look at Tableau when I say here that it's going to replace what you see on the left-hand side. It complements it. So you can have more successful digital transformation. So, Philippe, I think that might be enough because I can spend a whole hour just on that topic, but I'm very passionate about it.
Of course, for subject matter experts, that's perfect to describe as best as we can the solutions. So what you said essentially is that Tableau is not just for analytics, right?
Oh yes, I've had that conversation before, especially with somebody who does analytics at a level that is very sophisticated, because Tableau can do that too. But I know that that's not the full picture. And somebody who spends most of their time doing that can sometimes think, well, what are you doing with Tableau? You're just querying data and showing it. But that's essentially what every web page does. And many times, even if you take the time to kind of do something like, well, what's the p-value of what you're showing me, and bring it down to those terms, was that analysis now replicable in the future or in different situations? Like, you're bringing a scientific method of an analysis that works in an academic research environment and try to apply it to something like business and communication, something a lot more creative. Many times people just want to see what's in there and be able to act on it. So sometimes I shy away from just saying it's analytics, because it can be so much more than that.
Excellent. So how about we see this in action? I believe we have a lot of developers here, data devs, I should say, that are really excited to see what you have to show us.
Yeah, definitely. And if this is new for you and you want a way to get started right away, my recommendation potentially have a lot of impact for you or your company, it would be this way. Just think of data as a brand. If you want to look at an app that was built on top of Tableau, that is not necessarily the Tableau that you buy. It's kind of like an app that you would build on top of us. Look at Tableau Public. It's like the YouTube. This is going to be streamed on YouTube, the YouTube of data visualization in a way. And a lot of companies have done a lot of very interesting work. The idea is that you can publish analytical content for free and host it on public for free, and everybody can see it. This content can then be embeddable on your company's website. So that's how I end the conversation on that front. But I thought it was worth noting. Now, I'll swap my screen to this blog post. Philippe, are you saying use the Tableau REST API?
Yep, we can see
Okay.
it, and I'll share the link in the chat so that everybody can access it. All right, here, tell me.
Okay. Use the Tableau REST API with Postman to architect integrations. It's not just a plug. I did write it. The reason I bring it up is that it's a good complement to this stream. It will go into a lot of the details that we will mention today. Um, and a good place to start, because if we're talking about, well, what's possible with Tableau, let's look at a few finished examples, and then we'll spend all the time using the collection. But here's an example. So this is a project that I worked on. I built. It's called Greenlight, and it's basically I want people to be able to create a blog for personal reasons, or even if the company wants a portal, but then be able to embed Tableau in that blog. And I noticed that a lot of blog platforms out there did not have support for that type of work. So it's basically a static SSG site, static site generation, uses React. So here's the React component that will embed Tableau. I can tell it how to be responsive to different CSS breakpoints. And the end result will look like this. You'll have a Tableau visualization that you can style so it matches your app, and a custom toolbar that performs the same actions that you see right here. So this is just, imagine being able to embed analytical content, and the process of getting that content built is so much faster. So it's going to save you so much time. Um, yeah, this is so layer number one. People create this type of content with Tableau often. It can be a part of your app with a lot less effort than building it from scratch. Last thing I wanted to mention while we were here is that, oh, actually, this page is Markdown, by the way. So you might think it's all HTML. I've got it set up where I can write a blog post in Markdown, host it on GitHub for free, use GitHub Pages to host a blog for free. I'm not paying a single cent. The content is hosted on Tableau Public, again, for free, and I get an amazing portal.
It's really amazing. I'm sure a lot of people here don't even know about these capabilities. By the way, I shared the link to your example in the chat as well. So if you want to try it and see it, remember that you can also take a look at the sources from there.
Correct. Oh, definitely. The code base is fully open, and I'd welcome anybody who wants to work with me on this because it can be. There's a lot of directions I want to take it. But this is just one way of integrating with Tableau. Let me present content. So that means I also need APIs to be able to query Tableau and know what content I as a user can see. Could I potentially also manage that content, update it, give it a new owner, a new title? All of this is possible. Let's look at something that is a lot more focused on the REST API, not necessarily a front end. So this is actually a project that's fully just a Python backend, and I call it Tableau webhooks. We have Tableau has webhooks in the platform, so we can notify you of an event taking place, like somebody publishing a new dashboard. And once that happens, you'll get a post notification with some metadata, and you can use that payload to then make some decisions that can be automated. So what this project does is have an architecture that has a single endpoint for you to receive notifications from Tableau, and depending on the body of that post, we will. I would this code will be able to know if it relates to workbooks and dashboards, or users, or data sources, and with further logic, determining if you need to automate some process, like putting a warning on the data source because the refresh failed. And if we fix the problem and refresh the data source again, then we can remove that warning. None of this has to be manual if you understand Tableau APIs. So it's another great example. A lot of great docs walking you through high level concepts so that you can basically take this code base and make it your own. Before you even get into any of the details, it's just lets you understand high level what this is all about. But this is a great example. So you're actually building a solution that is very useful for a Tableau admin, for somebody who's using Tableau for one of their apps. And I'm not presenting any data. I'm just automating on top of Tableau. Originally, I started this work because I wanted to find a way to be notified via Slack or Twilio about events taking place in Tableau. So another great example, and here is another one that's also really neat. There's a new functionality that was added last year to Tableau called table extensions, and I'm able to query a REST API to get data, process it on a Python server where I can enhance the data. I might actually make multiple requests and stitch it together into a single enhanced data set. I can do some natural language processing, integrate with ChatGPT if I wanted to. But then once all of that is done, I send the data back to Tableau, and I'm able to build a visualization as you would with Tableau. Otherwise, it's all drag and drop. I don't have to write any code to get there. So another very interesting architecture. I'd say the only thing to be careful when you're doing this is that you need to know how to do processing in your language of choice so that everything that you do is efficient and quick. But
Very cool.
is that enough, Philippe? Do you think those are some good examples just to get
These
us
are
started?
excellent examples, and actually, I do have a question coming from the audience. Tech Lead Automation is asking: are there any gRPC-enabled APIs in your sorry, not Postman, in Tableau?
Internally, I know that
Aha.
internally we're huge fans. From an externally facing or public facing API point of view, we do not have a gRPC services. We don't have them available for the public.
All right, that's fair enough. And a follow-up question: are there limitations regarding the APIs? Any APIs?
Yeah, well, every SaaS platform will need to have a certain measure of just letting you know as a developer, well, if you're going to make these type of requests to Tableau, here's how often you can make these requests, and the payload can't be larger than a certain amount. And that type of information will be found on the documentation for the REST API. That's just normal. So you need to make sure that the integrations that you built account for that. But besides that, I'd say that the company is looking at APIs as something that is going to be very strategic, because when you think about it, it's almost like speaking the same language that a server speaks, you as a developer, as a human, but the other person in that conversation can change in the future. We could have something like a generative AI connecting to web service, needing to connect with the server. And what better way to do it than well-structured APIs that are documented and designed, and you can give an AI a machine-generated format that describes it like a collection. So um, we're very excited about the future. When it comes to limitations, maybe if you think of one more specific, I can
I
point you in
think
the right
this
way.
was an open question, but yes, it's always good to know that we are in a SaaS environment, multi-tenancy, so we make sure we want to shield the set from abuses, and that's what the platform continues to run smoothly, as always, because
Thank you,
it's
Philippe.
crunching down massive amount of data, so we need to be careful with that.
Sometimes I need a translator. Thank you.
No, no, it's a question we always get, and I mean it's true for the Salesforce core platform and even Tableau. So yes, common topic. All right, so that's a good example we had. So how about we now move to something that is really hands-on?
Sure, definitely. I'd be glad to do that. The first place that where I would get started in order before we go into the collection is here at Salesforce Developers. I'm sure most of you on the stream are familiar with this workspace. I just want to point out that you will find the Tableau REST API located right here, and you can fork the collection. We also have an environment file that you would want to fork. As we update the collection, you'll be able to update your own local copy as well. So this is the first place to get started. By the way, the the work that has been done to this workspace is incredible. It has so much traction. We're growing because our collection is new, so definitely support us if you can. Show us some love if you can. If it's useful for you, I encourage you to come and fork the collection. I have my own Postman app here locally. And yeah, it's just my workspace. And this is what I did. I forked the Tableau REST API. That's my nom de plume. Sometimes a nom de guerre. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, Philippe. You might correct me.
Ah, that's good. Nom
It's
de
good?
plume. That's
Nom
correct.
de
Yeah.
plume? Okay.
Yep.
Sometimes it's a nom de guerre as well. Uh, okay, so Tableau REST API collection. Now, while we're here, I might as well show a few things that I think are pretty unique to this collection to see what you think. First of which would be this pre-request script. And one of our intentions with the collection was to add functionality that would just enhance your quality of life as a user. So one thing that you need to do with Tableau's REST API, pretty much every API that's secured, is that you need to authenticate and then be able to use something like an API key in subsequent requests so that the server knows you have access to those resources. We want users to be able to do that, but then not have to worry about updating variables and keeping them up to date. So this pre-request script will basically handle that. We'll be able to make sure if we need to update any of the credentials that you need to use the collection, and it can pretty much run on autopilot if you wanted to. In a similar way, we also have tests that do similar work. So if regardless of what request you're sending, if the response body includes an error, then we're going to surface those errors in multiple ways to the end user to make it really obvious, hey, something is wrong. But similarly, if any of the so here's handle error, right? If we're doing handle credentials, if the response has any credentials, we'll go and update them for you automatically. And it's that quality of life functionality. A pretty unique usage of pre-requests and test scripts, but people seem to like it.
Yes,
Um,
these are super powerful feature and often underlooked, I would say.
often underlooked. Yeah. Um, so it definitely open to for feedback here. I think this is a space where somebody with their own understanding of a collection could come in and take us in a very creative direction. Now, another design decision that we made with this collection was to provide some variables that are here that won't we don't want people to have to update them manually very often. So something like your HTTPS, are using HTTPS or HTTP, for example. And here's that automatic authentication. By default, it's set to false, but if you want to use that automatic auth, you can set it to true. Um, Now, the real variables will be found in the environment file that looks like this. So really, to make your first call, all you need to do is provide the URL for your server, your username, um, and some form of authentication. I'm using a PAT, and I won't show it to you because it
Yeah,
needs to be
please
kept
don't.
secret.
So, for those of you who are wondering, I think it's time for me to give you an important tip. Whenever you fork the collection, you need to remember to fork as well the environment, because these are two different things. If you only fork the collection, you may be missing the environment. So that's something to keep in mind, because you'll need those variable values set up in the environment to run the collection. The scripts are using them, and the requests are using them. So don't
So
forget to
true.
fork both.
So true. And it's important because maybe let's say that you targeted a Tableau view to do something, but the full workflow requires that you make more calls to completion. So rather than having to worry about saving that ID and manually inserting it in every subsequent call, it's stored here as a variable. So your future calls can just reference the same variable. And if the view ID changes as you're testing things, it's just so much of an easier way to work with Postman. Highly recommended that you do this right here. Now, on that subject, Philippe, I think it's very important to indicate the following while we're here. And I'll actually show it right here. So you'll notice that in Salesforce Developers, when you go find our collection, we have a link that says to get started, see how to use that collection. And I don't know if this is a common pattern for collections, but we thought it would be a good way to collaborate with technical writers inside of Tableau and really enhance the collection for the community. So if you want to know how to use the collection, how to contribute to the collection, perhaps submitting your own pull request, how to create or add issues, we're using this repo because in that way we can track any issues, any feedback. But you'll find all this information right here. So if you feel lost after this stream and you need a quick reminder, we put in a lot of effort to make sure this is thorough enough to help you get started.
Absolutely. So what I'll do after the stream is that we'll make sure to update the description of the recording of this video, and we'll add all the links that I've been adding all along in the chat. I'll do a little recap and put them in the description.
Thank you. Yeah, that will really help people out. We recently had Tableau conference, and I was asked to present. So the topic I presented was Tableau's REST API and the Postman collection. For us to make our first call, I was signed in as an admin, and also point out right here, if you want to understand the authorization piece of the collection, look under the authorization tab. You'll see that you have options here, and these are meaningful if you're not familiar. So when you look at Tableau's REST API documentation, you see that they reference an API key or token. This is what they mean. So it's been set to API key. And then this pattern of keys means that you need to give it a name and a value. So this is a variable, but then decide if it should be added to the query, to the header, or as a query parameter. We use the header. So that's why it's been set for you. But if you were to read our documentation and create a collection, this is what you would do. And when I'm logging in as an admin, all you need to do is go to this URL, which we've also made easy for you. It's just we're using a bunch of variables like the protocol you're using, the server domain URL that you're using, your server name, the API version, all in one variable. So it's easy for you to reuse later. /auth/sign-in. And the request body is not complex either. We're basically dealing with credentials. So the PAT name, your access token name, your access token secret, and then this is optional. If you don't provide a content URL or a site name, we'll just use the default site for that environment. So let me show you what this looks like. I should be able to just hit send and get a response from Tableau that indicates a successful
Yes,
request.
always important to look for 200 OK.
Very always important. You know what I told people when we had that session? I said we built this session so that anybody, even if you've never worked with an API before, can still enjoy it. And we said these response codes are like the emojis of the HTTP
Yes,
web
get a
API
little
world.
thumbs up.
You say so much with very little, right?
Yep.
So
One debugging tip for people who are not yet familiar with Postman, you can always check what was sent and what was received by looking at the console tab at the bottom of the screen. From there, you'll see the exact values of all the variables. So you don't want to show them too long because there's the token in there, but that's
oh,
yeah.
and that's okay because this API key is temporary. anyways, and my environment is not a business critical environment at all. So I'm okay if you want to use this and make a few calls. Feel free. Let me know if you broke anything, but you probably won't. It's fine because honestly, so this what this means is that this hash value. Oh, I'm sorry. This hash value, um, it represents a session that Tableau understands, and then in subsequent requests, it will be added to a header. But it only has a certain expiration, anyways, and yeah. No, I wouldn't worry too much about that, Philippe. But this response body here lets me know that things are okay. What would happen if I perhaps, I don't know, provide a dummy value? And I'm kind of curious. So if I hit send, it's going to say 401 unauthorized, and it looks like the console is complaining as well. Um, now,
Yeah. So this is not the console. The console, you just close it, but this is the response. But when you look at the console, you can look specifically at the headers that were sent, because otherwise you don't really know how the variables are resolved. I think that's the added value of the console. You can see the query. If you expand the first line, the post line, that returns a 4-1, there's a little caret symbol. Oh, well,
oh,
you
did I
just,
clear it by mistake? I
yeah,
wasn't following.
you cleared it. Send it again, maybe.
Yeah,
Oh, keep the console open and
there we go.
show it again. If you look at the caret on the first line of the console, you can expand this, and you'll have a look at all the requests that were sent. So when you have a lot of variables, it's very helpful to figure out what were the values that were actually sent to the server. For debugging purposes, it's very helpful.
Very true. So you would notice that this here doesn't really make much sense. That was the issue right there. So, well, what we want to do, and perhaps will be more obvious with other requests, is to help you identify when something's wrong, because, and here's another neat trick for users of this collection. If you click on the documentation side, every method has a link to the official Tableau documentation. Sign in is an example with a list of common error codes as well. So we want to make it easy for you to come here and see, well, I got a 400 status and this is the error code, and we're going to help you figure out what's troubling you. So eh,
Super convenient.
super convenient as much as possible. Every method will have a list, but if you're finding running into something that's hard to describe just by looking at the method, you can come to this section called handling errors in our official documentation, and we have a full table. So this is when you know when somebody's building a quality backend is that they've put a lot of thought into error codes and helping you figure out what's going on. This is critical.
I guess
I
other
personally
things can go
wouldn't,
wrong.
yeah, I wouldn't integrate with something that at least doesn't have some of these some error codes that I can debug. So yeah, very very useful. Let me come back to the collection real quick. So these are some of the signals besides perhaps like watching a demo like today where I'm not fully in control. I'm kind of responding to Philippe's questions in a way. But you also want to look when you're looking at a platform and you're more architecturally minded, look at the community. Are those people active? Some of the tooling that has been provided complement that community. Yeah, and what we just saw here with the documentation, very, very important. I think our docs are very, very thorough. Now, when I authenticated into Tableau, I was provided with an API key and we automatically set it here for you. This is a variable that's more of like a pro. You shouldn't worry about setting this manually ever. You can, but you shouldn't. But now that we do have a key, we have a key to the castle. One of the requests that we can make is to get a list of workbooks on the site or a list of views. So here's query views for site. And you might realize, wow, that folder is huge, and it is. There we have a very wide API surface, and it's telling me that we have a few parameters with this request. So they're called params. These are query params. And what they indicate is that you may specify something like the page size. It gets added with the right syntax to the URL, or to, yeah, to basically the what you see right here. And you could provide a value. Here's an optional description. So great. Query parameters right here, not necessary to make a request. There are some automatically generated headers on this tab, which include the API key I mentioned earlier. Its name is X Tableau Auth, and the value is the API key. So ease of life, all of this is taken care of for you, and no request body because I'm just asking for a list. So I'll go
It's
ahead.
a get method. Yeah, nobody forgets.
Nobody forgets, and I get a 200 OK with a list of views. Very rich. Names, content URLs. So let's say you're building an application and you just wanted the path to get that view to that view. Um, and this is like a default set of data that you can request, but there are also, and why not just try this on the fly? No guarantees, Philippe, that this will work on the first run.
Well,
But let
that's
me
the
see.
fun of live coding. I mean, we're taking risks here, so
Yeah, I'm
I
honestly
love it.
just operating off of memory here, and I think it's underscore underscore all. And if I send a request with that, well, I think it complained, yeah,
Well,
invalid.
that's a good example of the 400 request there with our specific error code. So
That's right. Yeah. So my memory might not be as good as I thought it was, but anyways, this is where you would provide a value for that field parameter. And well, it's basically letting me know that Stefan, you need to go back to the docs real quick and make sure that you got that right. Um, but there we go. So where does this become actionable? So let's say I have views for a site, but
ac-
then
actually, before we move on to another query, I have a quick question for you. Not
uh-huh.
something that has been asked on the chat, but I think that will be relevant for everyone. Is there a way to get some JSON output out of this REST API, or is it only XML based?
Oh, most definitely. Yes, there is a way. And the way to get there would be to provide a custom accept header. Yeah, I think this
So you can just override the value of the previous one. Yeah.
does it allow me to just type in
Yeah.
here? Oh, it does. Okay. Oh, it looks like I can't type. I think I
Oh,
just need to unmark that and then here specify that
application
what I want
JSON.
is
Oh,
um
you just passed it. Was
did I
application
pass it?
JSON? Yes, third one. Third one. Oh, third one.
There we go.
Well, yeah.
I don't know why I missed that. Okay, hit send
Oh,
and
very cool. Same data in JSON. I know for my part, I really prefer JSON. It's way easier to parse, especially if you're doing like JavaScript or other technologies like this.
oh yeah.
But it's good to
Uh,
know.
Full agreement with you there. There definitely. And now the thing is, if you read, have you read? I forgot his name, but for the person that first came up with REST architecture, Roy Fielding. Well,
Ah, yeah,
you know what? When he said when you're building a REST API, people are calling things REST APIs that are not REST APIs. Um,
absolutely.
and XML having this hyperlinks, like this is really more architecturally similar to what REST API as it was originally defined. You make the argument that because the data that you're getting through a web API is still operating through a browser and the inner workings of a browser that follows this architecture that you're RESTful because all you're getting is data for still a RESTful pattern anyways. That's how I see it. But yeah, there's pros and cons to JSON and XML.
At least you have the choice. That's great.
Yeah.
Some people don't know about it. I mean, we have the same thing on the Salesforce platform APIs. By default, we're serving JSON, but some people prefer XML. So there's always a little header, just like you showed, that can help you toggle between one or the other. So if you have a product with specific technologies which are not super friendly when parsing a language, well, you can toggle between one or the other. It's really good to remember.
For sure. And that blog post, Roti Fielding wrote a blog post. So you can see how people thought about these questions in 2008. Very active comment section and everything. I thought it was a good read. If I got his name right. uh, Philippe, do you think that this is resonating at least with you? Perhaps I don't know if with members of
Yep,
the audience, but just
absolutely.
okay. Excellent. So what we can do is this continue exploring what we're doing here. And well, I have a view. It's called a view. Its name is overview and it has an ID. So one of the reasons why we set up that environment file is that we want to make it easy for you to find something like an ID that you care about. Go to set Tableau environment and then set the view ID without really having to change tabs too much. So it will basically appear here under that environment file.
That's
There we
super
go.
nice shortcut. I didn't even know about this one, so very convenient.
Oh, it's so convenient because what if my
No
next
copy pasting, so that's great.
no copy pasting. I want to avoid copy pasting for sure. Now I'm a Tableau guy, so one of the ways people have described Tableau for all these years has been being able to see and understand data at the speed of thought, meaning that the UI was built in such a way that if you're presented with a data source and you have questions about that data, that you'll be able to drag it into the view, manipulate it, but then not have to go through like a wizard that says, "Oh, you want a bar chart? Then tell me what's your time and or like a line chart. Tell me what's your date field and what's your measure that you care about," and just go through this wizard. It's more a lot more open and exploratory because people don't think that way. And when I started using Postman to understand an API to build an integration, for me it was wow, it's almost like the same feeling because yeah, I can read the documentation, but sometimes people who write the documentation don't know that you can do so many other things with those endpoints, other use cases that they never even dreamed about. So, I mean, the docs are great to help you troubleshoot, but having something like this that will give you other types of answers about an API is great. So, well, let's look at this. So we have that view ID, right? So we were using that view ID and we actually have that value, but it looks like here it's requesting a workbook ID and we don't have a workbook ID yet. So let's go ahead and grab it. Now, to help the audience understand what this means, here's another set of variables. They're called path variables. And the syntax in Postman is to use those. It's a colon, not a semicolon. Use a colon and then name it.
Yep.
It will appear right here. And then you can provide a manual value if you wanted to. But quality of life, let's make that a variable. So what I need is a workbook. Let's get started with a workbook first. I'm going to query workbooks for sites. Nobody required in this one. It's pretty straightforward. And what I'll do is grab this ID from the Superstore workbook. I'll go set Tableau environment, set that to be the workbook ID. So we're good to go there. And now I want views for that workbook. So now that we have an ID, you see here's the value. I'm going to hit send. And Tableau is going to give me a list of views contained within that workbook, which includes this one called overview. So I already have both the workbook ID that I need and the view ID that I need. So I'm going to go ahead and request an image. Let's see if I can get a preview image of that dashboard. This is it.
Wow, very cool. It worked.
And I love it that it shows up right here. It's great. So if you look at this the way I see it and you're thinking, wow, okay, so well, how could this be useful? Well, let's say that you have a menu of analytical content for a user, and could you build an integration that always wants to request this stuff from Tableau every single time and put that type of load on your Tableau environment? You're welcome to. I would, if this data doesn't change often, perhaps request the image once and cache it, and you know, when people are navigating into my application, sometimes people are just navigating and they click around for different reasons. So if you assume that they want to see a live interactive dashboard every time they navigate, then you're putting that load on your environment as well. Whereas if you don't assume that's the case and you instead load a cache image, but then wait until the user perhaps hovers over the image or clicks on an interact button and then wait to get the interactive content, you've all of a sudden compose an experience that gets the same result and you're being so much more efficient. So that's why I truly love about this space. Tableau and APIs we have and the APIs you have, and letting you just be so much more creative with data.
I will admit, but I don't have a lot of experience with the Tableau APIs, but this particular API I already used in the past. And I was exploring how I could integrate Tableau within Slack just before the acquisition, and then found this is a good way to give previews of views within Slack. So that's an example of what you could do with this. But I guess now the integration is way more mature now. You can do it natively instead of having to hack through the APIs.
Yeah, if you think about this now from somebody who knows that at your company you need to deliver on 10 different solutions that require data and analytics plus something else. So maybe you need to take payments. So, well, it would be kind of smart to see if we can use Stripe for that. I don't want to build a whole payment system from scratch. I might use Stripe. Well, the app will also need great search. And we can go and build our own search functionality, but we could also look at Algolia and see what its price is and see if we can integrate that with our app. Well, now look at the same question for analytics and think if you can cover ground so much faster with less risk um, at a high level, this approach towards solving problems I've seen has been best described as um, modular or composable web architecture. And here's a good book called The Web's New Architecture, Modular, and How It's Changing Online Businesses. Um, yeah, so this is the founder of Gatsby, which is a big company in this space. But I think overall, what they're describing is just, hey, you have all these services everywhere that can help you cover ground so much faster. You make the decision up to what point you want to integrate with them to help you reach your goals. But the what matters is the goal and how to maintain what you're building, rather than being so hyper focused on I want to use the latest and greatest language with the latest and greatest frameworks and the latest and greatest dependencies. That will slow you down. So, um, hey, I can talk about that all day, so I'll make sure I won't belabor the point too much. But do you want to see a different example, Philippe, of not only requesting an image, but perhaps something like data?
Sure. I have a little question from the audience there about the types of authentications. So you mentioned an API key. Is there something else?
Definitely. What a fantastic question because that matters. It definitely does. We support for you to authenticate with a username or password. We also have what's called a personal access token that has settings where you can say, well, the token expires after a certain amount of time and stuff like that. Very often, companies need to comply with something like that. And in addition, we also have support for signing in with a JWT. In the Tableau world, that's called a connected app. What I it, Postman cannot encode a JWT for you, so you will need either a local script or some other app. There are a few others that can do this for you that will just generate the JWT for you, and then you can pass that to the body when you make your request. Right here. Now, what I like, this is I think the most promising authentication method looking forward into the future because the full feature set is going to be added to the platform. But what I'm saying is like the JWT format lets you to declare scopes, and that's something we already declare support today. So this this token that you're using will only let you read data from Tableau and only read data as it relates to workbooks. I don't want you to be able to request metadata for data sources or something like that. So you can actually encode what users can do within that token. It's so much more powerful.
Yeah, way more secure. I agree.
Great. Yeah. So very interesting topic. And this is really the key. I like this pattern so much and being able to declare more and more scopes in the token because that means that you can tailor what Tableau is doing and the user experience and only have to really maintain it on the code base that is generating these sessions for that end user, right? So like generating the token, who is this individual, and should they be able to edit content through the browser or only view and consume content? So, Philippe, can I jump out real quick just to make sure that this part is clear to
Sure. I
people on
think
the
we're
screen?
good. We can take a few more minutes, but in the interest of time, we'll have to move to the next
Oh,
topic after.
okay, yeah, very true. This is will be quick, but you'll notice that this is Tableau Public. I mentioned it earlier. And you'll find if you want a good example of what content can people build with Tableau Desktop, it's right here. A lot of these just honestly look amazing. Healthcare, education, and all sorts of topics. If you wanted to get like a sample visualization for you to start testing as a developer, you'll find great content here. Now, let's go ahead and look at this dashboard, and you'll notice that, well, I have to log in, but I can actually create a dashboard, I'll go to this overview dashboard that you saw earlier in the demo. You can do the same experience on Tableau Public, but I'll click on the edit button right here, and it will take me into this the full power of Tableau in your browser. You can embed this in your application. It can be part of the analytical experiences that you're building for people. And yeah, so this is what I meant when in the token you can specify if a given user has the ability to do this, be able to author their own content or only view the content you created for them. Pretty amazing.
Yes, very impressive.
Now I know Philippe, with regards to time, um, I want to know what you think. Do you want me to go ahead and make another request in Postman, or is there perhaps a question that you feel I should answer?
So for the moment, we have answered all the questions. So keep them going. And if you want to show another example while we wait for another question, that's good. Remember, we'll have a little time to talk a bit about roadmap after. But yeah, if you want to show another request in the meantime, I think we have time.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, um, but I think a good place to go next would be just to query data from that view. And we have different endpoints for requesting data. One of those will respond with an Excel file, which if you show in Postman, it will just show up as a binary file. So what I do is save it and then open it in Excel. But this endpoint responds with CSV, so I think it's fully
Aha,
viewable.
you bring a good point. So by default, there is no viewer for CSV within Postman. But now I'm going to do a little personal plug, shameless plug, I should say. I've built something called a visualization. So essentially, when you look at the response there, you're looking at the pretty version of the response. But when you set up a visualizer, you can have a bit of JavaScript, but formats the answer for you. And I built such a visualizer for CSV, so we could plug it in the future.
Wow, I didn't know that was possible. I learned something
And
every day.
you could actually build a bit of JavaScript that like calls Tableau itself to visualize Tableau data from its own APIs. So think of it. It's kind of meta, but it's pretty powerful.
This is why this space is so exciting.
It
Definitely,
is.
I love it. But this is it. So you'll find more details in the blog post we brought up when we started this stream. If you wanted to customize what you're getting back as a response, we'll give you the ability to filter the data. It's under params. Declare something like field names, what fields you want, but be able to filter those fields. So let's say I only wanted results for Alabama and Arizona. I can tell the API to just respond with that and not the rest. So yeah, this is just going to be enhanced. You brought up roadmap. I am so excited because if you didn't go to conference this year, one of the announcements that was made is that Tableau is developing this virtual data source VDS, this whole capability of for you to be able to request data from Tableau through REST APIs. And I think it's going to be an amazing offering. Honestly, amazing offering because think about what I just described. You can have a team of people who learns how to use Tableau, can connect to any kind of data source really, and then build content off of that with a workflow that's so much faster and actionable than what the way that you've probably been doing it without that kind of tooling. But then what if the content that was built with that workflow eventually justified itself to where the company realizes, well, we do want to have a REST API because maybe it's not just about using that data model to build a dashboard. Maybe that data model is also useful to send notifications to people and other things in our application. Well, when this comes out, and it is a forward-looking statement, so don't think like I'm describing the future here. Things may change, but
You
overall, the
bring up a
high-level
good
vision,
point. Let me
yeah.
take a second just to show this to everyone. We're always keeping safe. So everything we're going to talk about regarding roadmap or things that should be used to make purchasing decisions. So usual wall side, which with the wall of text, but yes, I want
Please
to be
cover for
sure.
me, Philippe. You're more experienced in that side than I am. But all I say is, regardless the shape of what it will take in the future, it will never conflict with what Tableau is doing today by embedding this content because then you decide whether you want to take that content a different direction and build it yourself. But that wasn't your only choice. That was not slowing you down. They can both coexist with each other perfectly. We have so many other APIs. that are front end specific that will let you communicate between the Tableau content and your website. And yeah, imagine just the power, how much faster people can operationalize what the user base in Tableau is doing and take it in a different direction. So if you want a preview of what that could look like, I think this is a good workflow because you're requesting data from Tableau, and it's expected to get more and more customizable, powerful, operational.
Very cool.
Yeah, and well, this is the organization of all the methods we support, but you can notice, like, if I were to go to something like the metadata folder, just how many options you have. It's actually quite large. Now, this references metadata, which is another API that we have that's GraphQL. So if you want to use GraphQL and in a single request get a bunch of information about your Tableau environment, you can do so. These REST API methods are there to help you have CRUD functionality over some of these assets. So it's tying in the GraphQL world that supports our metadata service with REST API endpoints so you can programmatically manage it. Pretty neat stuff. So I had a customer that came up to me when we were at Tableau conference talking about the collection, and he said, "Wow, I finally know how to save so much time." I won't say their name or anything, but it's a problem that many admins have. If you have a data source that run into any problems, you can notify the community through a quality warning. You can do that manually, or honestly, you can have a webhook and some automation do it for you. Your boss doesn't need to know.
Very nice. So you can track basically uptime or issues like on the long run also if you need indicators about all of this.
That's right. That's right. So, yeah, making the life of an admin easier, letting you deliver analytical solutions for your company a lot faster. I think it's a great offering, and I'm so excited to see that there's more and more interest from the developer side towards what Tableau can do for you. So, yeah, if you were to ask me, Stefan, can you kind of like just create a name that best explains the marriage of a Tableau investment with architects and software developers at a company? I think it matches very well with this trend that's called composable or um, composable web architecture is the word that I was looking for. That's right. So just call it composable analytics.
Very
That's probably a
nice.
good name for it.
And automatable, if it's the word.
Automatable. That's That's very true. And that's why, because also traditionally people have looked at this space, Tableau plus APIs, to for an externally facing use case. Perhaps you're building an app to reach your customers, but very often you'll have many of these needs internally. You may have a portal that's listing company training videos, but wouldn't it be nice for the people maintaining those videos and other individuals who are concerned about governing this internal service just have some data insights? Well, with Tableau, getting those insights are very straightforward, but wouldn't it be nice to have those insights delivered within the same application that's hosting the training content? Well, with our embedded capabilities and these APIs, that's certainly doable.
Oh, that's a super nice overview of everything you can do. You want to share anything else on the roadmap, or are we nearing the end?
Well, yeah, I think one thing that you should know as you see more and more interest in this space is also look at other features that are coming out that were announced at TC, such as Pulse, which seems to indicate like a great ability to be able to reach people who rely on data, perhaps through notifications and like being able to understand what kind of metrics people are most interested in. So yeah, I think that this is going to be something that's going to complement any API based use case. Yeah, so it's difficult sometimes to be able to describe and create that enthusiasm in you. Maybe my emotions are going to be enough. I'm very excited about what's coming and what we have today.
Yeah, such a
Um,
powerful tool. Plenty of options there to implement, and yeah, the sky is the limit essentially. So yeah,
Sky is the limit. You know what? There's one last thing, Philippe, that I would like to bring up because I think it's
Sure thing.
useful to people on the stream. If you wanted after the stream to on your own explore the Tableau developer program, you can find tableau.com/developer. This is where you can find it. Or under at our website under resources, you will also find a link to the developer program. When you join the developer program, you will have access to a Slack workspace where our community hangs out and helps each other and asks questions. And you also have access to a developer sandbox, a Tableau site for free for you to develop on top of and do tests and try your own scripts. And it's not meant for you to keep it forever. You can certainly every few weeks let us know, yes, I'm still using the sandbox, and keep using it. The idea is that you as a developer will be able to test all the integrations that you'd want. And if you need your own environment, it's there for you. Now, under tools and APIs and SDKs, you'll find documentation for these other capabilities. And yeah, if you wanted to look at something like Connect, this will let you build custom connectors to your own data sources. Work with, yeah, here's the connector SDK, Hyper API to create hyper files. This is just a Tableau type of data source. But anyways, if you wanted to learn more, please come to this page, Advanced Analytics, how to integrate Tableau with R, Python, and MATLAB, um, embedding into a front end. I wanted to make sure that people knew that this resource exists, and more than anything, come and check it out.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Plenty of useful resources. We'll make sure to add them to the description of this stream when it's recorded. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't see any questions at the moment. So if you have a few, now's the time. And we'll give you a minute to ask questions. And after that, I think we can call it a day.
While we're there, I'm just going to show
Sure.
this little app real quick. One thing that's neat about it, I'll just open it.
Yep.
You'll notice that it's a PWA, it's a progressive web app. So it's actually showing up down here with its own app logo and everything, but it's the same app you saw in the browser. Check it
Very
out.
nice.
And I can resize this. So let's try to make this fit into a phone layout. So you'll notice that the Tableau integration code, notice that there was a change in the size of the screen and loaded a layout that was a better fit. It's responsive.
Very cool. Because building responsive diagrams and views, it's not something you want to do yourself. So that is very helpful.
That's right.
All right. I don't see any questions, so I think we're going to close the stream. I want to thank you, Stefan, for explaining all of this, all of the technology that we saw today, and taking a lot of your time to build this awesome collection. That's super helpful, I think. We'll make sure to share the resources again. And for those of you who joined us, thank you for watching. There's a weekly program on the codeLive. So next week, another topic. If you may want to make sure that you don't miss it, make sure to subscribe and like this video. Thanks, everyone. And sure, see you again next time. Thanks, Stefan, again.
Have a great week. Thanks for coming.
Bye, everyone.